So, Brian, can you make me talk like you did? Really think you can do better? Yeah. And another thing. So, guys, I want to talk about this. Worship has been on my mind so much lately. So much of what we do here is worship, but we don't often talk about what the purpose and the power of worship is. And it's felt like revelation to me as I've explored this and studied this. And so I want to start with probably the greatest revelation of worship came from Jesus. And it's the Gospel of John, chapter 4, when he meets the Samaritan woman at the well. Now, she was an outcast in the Jewish society, right? So the first thing about worship is no one is excluded. And Jesus, in John it says, Jesus only did what he heard the Father do, what he saw the Father do, and he only said what he heard the Father saying. And Hebrews 1:3 says that Jesus is the perfect representation of the Father. So listen to what Jesus says about worshipers. True worshipers will worship the Father in the Spirit and in truth, for they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. Did you hear that? He's not saying that the Father seeks worship. What did he say? He said the Father seeks worshipers. Why is that an important distinction? You would think that the Father would say, yeah, come on and worship me. But he says, I want worshipers. Why would he say that? I believe the explanation comes in Psalm 135. Listen to this. The idols of the heathen nations are silver and gold, the work of human hands. They have mouths but do not speak. They have eyes but they do not see. They have ears but they do not hear. And there is no breath in their mouths. Those who make them and all who trust them shall become like them. Whoa. Here's another way to say that. We become what we worship. We become like that which we worship. The Father, through Jesus, says, I want worshipers. The very best that the Father has to give us is to make him like himself. Do you realize the purpose of worship is to draw us into an encounter with the Father, to make us like him? Would you stand up here just a minute? I need your help. Okay. So, I want you to stand right here. Okay. So, this is God the Father. Say hello.
Hello.
Okay. In Psalm 16, verse 8, it says, the Father is at my right hand. But in the verse 11, at the very end of the psalm, you know what it says? It says, I am at the right hand of the Father. Now, how can that be that the Father would be at my right hand at the same time that I'm at the right hand of the Father? Did you hold that for me? That's how. This is what worship looks like. This is what worship looks like. Worship is a face-to-face encounter with the Lord. Now, the great thing Jesus said, I will never leave you. I will never betray you. So think of this as an electric circuit.
Okay.
The Father is always pouring into me. But how do I complete the circuit? If I had a light bulb in my mouth, how am I going to light up that light bulb? There's only one way. I come to the Father. I complete the circuit. And the love of the Father lights me up. Lights up. This is the power and the purpose of worship. To draw us into a face-to-face encounter. To make us like him. And in his presence, to be transformed. You know, one of the other translations for the word to worship is to kiss. It's that intimate. That's what worship looks like. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Well, did she do good? Yeah. So think about Romans 12. Romans 12, chapter 1. This is a neat place to jump to. It would be even neater if I could find it. Here we go. Paul says this, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Think about that. You know, when I give thanks, I offer a sacrifice. The scriptures say I offer a sacrifice of thanks. That means to give thanks a step beyond what's convenient. So I may give thanks even in the middle when I'm being deluged with things and I don't feel very thankful. We thank God for what he's done. We enter his gates with thanksgiving. We enter his courts with praise, into his presence with praise. So think of this stair-step to encounters. I approach the Lord with thanksgiving, a sacrifice of thanksgiving. And then the next step is I approach him with a sacrifice of praise that costs me something. You know, we thank God for what he's done, but we praise him for his nature, for who he is. The reason that's so important is that these miracles that God does for us, they're not one-off random things. They are expressions of the nature of God. What is the nature of God? It's the fruit of the Spirit, right? In Galatians, God is love and joy and peace. He is patience, kindness, and goodness. He is faithfulness and gentleness and a sound mind, self-control. So I can offer a sacrifice of thanksgiving. I can offer a sacrifice of praise. But when it comes to worship, you and I are the sacrifice. Paul says, present your bodies as a living sacrifice. Do you know what that means? Nothing is secular anymore. Everything where we live and move and have our being, we draw ourselves and draw the kingdom of heaven into us. Everything is worship now. And then what does it say? That act of worship gives us the encounter with God, the presence of God, to fulfill what Paul says next. Do not be conformed to this world. That word conformed actually means to be poured into a mold and to be shaped by the world. Don't be conformed to this world. But what? Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. You know that word transformed is the same word that's used later on in the Gospels to describe Christ when he was transfigured, when he was and lit up like lightning and he was transfigured. That's the same word. Be ye transfigured by the renewing of your mind. How do we do that? How do we renew our minds? It's face-to-face encounter. Now I want to give you, this is what just, I don't know if I'm going to get through this without crying here, but one of the most beautiful pictures of what worship looks like. You know, I want to talk about this worship because it's tempting to think that worship is a duty. We go to Mass every Sunday, and yes, that's worship. We pray in the mornings every day, and yes, that is worship. But you know, another word for worship is devotion. Have you ever heard of the daily devotions? That's getting closer to what worship looks like. Worship is a heart matter. Listen to this. This is the story of the woman with the alabaster jar. This story is so important that it appears in some form in all four Gospels. I'm going to read the one to you from Mark. While Jesus was in Bethany, reclining at the table in the home of Simon the leper, a woman came with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume made of pure nard. She broke the jar. Did you notice that? She didn't open it up so she could put it back together. She's pouring out everything she has. She broke the jar. We hear in one of the other Gospels that this was worth about a year's wages. So this is about $50,000 or $60,000 worth of perfume that she's pouring out over him. The woman came with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume made of pure nard. She broke the jar and poured the perfume on his head. Some of the other Gospels, it says, she poured the perfume on his head. She poured it on his feet. She wiped his feet with her hair and her tears. Some of those presents were saying indignantly to one another, why the waste of this perfume? It could have been sold for more than a year's wages and the money given to the poor. And they rebuked her harshly. Jesus steps in. Leave her alone. Pretty bold, huh? Jesus always defends his worshipers. Leave her alone, said Jesus. Why are you bothering her? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, and you can help them anytime you want. But you will not always have me. She did what she could. She poured out perfume on my body beforehand to prepare it for my burial. Truly, I tell you, wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. Do you realize this is the only place mentioned in all of the Gospels where Jesus declares that this act will be forever intimately associated with his gospel, with his life and death and resurrection? This is that big a deal. I want to tell you, this is what worship looks like. Why did she do that? Why did she do that? Why did she take a year's worth of wages and with weeping pour it out over Jesus? There's only one explanation. She was loving him back. I think it's 1 Peter, I think it's either 1 John or 1 John 4:19 says, we love him because he first loved us. Now we're getting to what worship looks like. This is what worship is. She was so overwhelmed with how he loved her that the only reasonable thing to do was pour out everything she had. I want to leave you with this idea. Jesus, that's pretty heavenly. I like that. Jesus has loved us in such an extravagant way. There's almost no way to get our arms around it. But you know what he's done? He's taken his supernatural love and he's planted it in our hearts. You and I, we get to take hold of that supernatural love and love him back with the love with which he first loved us. Do you remember that circuit? We love him back with the love with which he first loved us. This is what worship looks like. This is what it means to be a worshiper. God makes us like him when we complete that circuit of love. You know what happens? I made a little joke about the light bulb in my mouth lighting up. But you know what's really happening is when you and I complete that circuit, we love him back with the love with which he first loved us. We love him back with all our hearts, all our souls, all our minds, all our strength. We step into his supernatural presence. This is how you and I encounter God. It all flows from him, from his love to us, and our deliberately choosing to love him back. This is what worship looks like. And you know what Exodus 23:25 says? When we worship him, read when we love him back, it says he takes away all of our infirmities. The actual Hebrew for that says, it's actually translated as he turns off. He turns off our sicknesses. He turns off the cells that are driving cancer. He turns off the DNA that tries to make macular degeneration. He turns off the attacks of the evil one. This is the power of worship, that we get to step into his presence as he makes us like him. Bless you guys.
Amen.